right, good morning. So I decided to do a little live audio straight out of my waking up and just contemplating and meditating and how I can really bring some richness to those who are listening, some aliveness and possibility where sometimes life can seem to just close in around us and get in the way of what it is that we really want or desire or would be fulfilling for us. So how can you heal the past, empower the present, and design a new future is the title of this audio. And all three of these dimensions are important to look at. Heal the past, empower the present, and design a new future. We can't do the new future part, can't do the design of a new future if we haven't healed our past. Our past is recorded in our entire brain, nervous system, our body, and our very entire being is reacting and responding every day from the past to the situations and circumstances that we experience, how we were handled or how we, as a child, or how we even developed inside of our mother's womb when, those 9 months were taking place and our mother is, having her life experiences, like what's happening to her and through her is also happening to us. We are recording very early on all of the psychological and emotional and verbal patterns and habits that our mother has within herself. And these become the background of our own consciousness, the foundation of our own consciousness. It's going to produce a way of thinking and of feeling and experiencing life. This is way before we develop language. And this becomes the core of our identity and what we think, the world is or what we are or what's possible for us. And most of this stuff that's, being absorbed into our nervous system, into our mind, into our memory is way below the conscious level of our awareness. And so what happens is we find ourselves as we grow up and get older, we start to interact with life, we find ourselves struggling in relationships, struggling to achieve what we want, to make the amount of money that we would like to have, to achieve the objects of our desire. And we don't understand what's getting in the way. We try, and maybe some of us even succeed. And for those of us who succeed at getting it, then we find that something inside of us still isn't fulfilled. And I see this so many times in my own life, like many, many different times in my own life. And with all the different people I've worked with over the last 20 years, there's just a tremendous amount of dis-ease inside of people about where they are, even when they have all the good stuff. I mean, I have had multiple clients that have had great financial success. They've achieved beyond what they even dreamed. I mean, it's outstanding. And yet they'll have relationship issues, or they're not feeling good enough in themselves still, or they're not feeling fulfilled inside of their lives. I've worked with a surgeon who just had tremendous relationship problems, very, very successful, renowned surgeon. And he was unable to create a relationship that was fulfilling, that brought him love. He was even attracted to certain types of women that were never going to produce that for him. And, but he wanted that. I mean, he was like compelled. And this guy was, very wealthy, like extremely wealthy, extremely successful practice. And, but this area of his life was just totally out of whack. And it was rooted in his childhood, right? There was some past conditions and experiences that wired into his brain, his nervous system, and created a certain type of attraction to women that would basically want money and provide him with, less than what he really wanted, which was fulfillment and connection and love and intimacy. And, we could have worked on, creating a new future with the type of woman that he would want. and desire, but it wouldn't get anywhere because deep down he was hardwired to be attracted to a certain type of woman who would be into him for money and not show him love and affection. And he could not get away, could not break away from this pattern because it's so deeply embedded in the psyche and the emotional nature. And it's really difficult for human beings to access this on their own. It's virtually impossible to do on our own. It's something that I only see happening inside of groups and group dynamics. When people come together a certain way with one another, there's an ability to connect inwardly and see inside of our history and to make peace with things, or to release different perspectives or reactional patterns that we've developed that cause us to perpetuate behavior that we deem destructive. So it's possible to give all of this up. It's possible to make peace with things inside of ourselves. But the how is missing from most human beings because we are not raised to navigate and to explore. We're not trained to navigate and explore these inner territories. We are raised very early on to be focused on outward things. I mean, we're even given toys and external objects, and we're trained in school to read books and learn about the world out there and perform experiments or play. And all of this stuff is very beneficial. It's extremely beneficial and very important. The only thing is we're leaving something out in our educational system. Our parents at home are unable to really teach us this because they weren't taught it. They weren't able to receive it themselves, so they can't show it to us. And what I mean like the ability to be interiorly aware of my own thoughts, emotions, feelings, sensations, and understand the inner conditions of my human nature. And so I've been kind of, I don't know if I want to say the word is forced, but perhaps it is forced because of my upbringing and the challenges I faced. There was abuse in the home, and it led to me getting involved with gangs and drugs and violent crimes, and that lifestyle brought me to an end, of my life, literally in 1999 when I overdosed, and I had no heartbeat, no pulse, and fortunately I was resuscitated and I was brought back to life, and I just considered that a real gift, and I decided to turn my life around. But that difficulty and challenge that I was, faced with at that time was really like, how did I get here? And like, what's going on with me? And of course, I asked the question, what's wrong with me? Which I, would not recommend anyone do about themselves. But like, just how do I function is really what I started to dial into as a question I needed to answer. How did I get here? What was it that led me to this place? How did I almost lose my life? And that question was pretty simply asked, but then it started to open up a lot, and it started to help me discover what was going on inside of me that led to all my behaviors that caused me to have all these results that I was now regretting having, right? And so I have an extreme case in my life. A lot of people don't have these extreme backgrounds of abuse and trauma, or, gang life and crime life and drugs, although a lot of people do. But a lot of people still have problems in their life that they're unhappy with and they don't know how to solve, and they're challenged by. So what's going, but they don't understand what to do about it, how they got there, how to turn it around basically is missing. Well, there's a need to, I found, at least within myself and with everyone that I've worked with and made any progress with, there's a need to make peace with our past, to heal the past. There's so much resistance to what there is in our history because there's painful moments. There's moments of physical pain and abuse sometimes. There's rejection. There's no love. There's no affection. There's embarrassment. There's shame. There's guilt. There's various emotions. There's various things that happen. And then there's various emotions that come along with the experiences that we're having. And when we are not, when they don't feel good and we're not happy to have these experiences, what happens is we resist. We start to resist what happened to us. We start to resist our own feelings about it. We even learn not to feel certain things. We are told not to cry. We're told to shut up and go to our room or whatever there is. And we don't learn a healthy way of being with and accepting our own emotions and maybe our thoughts and our perspectives. So we learn to basically shut them down because they're often shut down externally. And so we think that that's, there's no outlet. So we think that that's the way it is. And we develop this habit of shutting ourselves down emotionally and psychologically and not looking at certain things. And then we create certain patterns of thought and emotion and action to compensate for this shutdown that we feel. And what happens is we're now reacting to something historically, and our reason for doing something is based on something painful or some kind of loss of power or some kind of negation against us, or maybe we self-negate and we determine that we're not powerful, we're not strong enough, we're never going to be able to get what we want, or whatever it is that we might determine in that moment. It becomes a powerful negating force that prevents us from taking action. But we know that we don't want to stay stuck there, but we've already made this conclusion. We've already made this decision about ourselves, about other people, about the world. And so we're, trapped inside of our own, prison. And then we feel that, and we're like, no, we must go on, and we force our way out. But what happened is we don't really force our way out. We don't make that part of us that negated ourselves disappear in any way. It actually has been like anchored in, and now I'm reacting from that place of resistance to myself, negation of myself, and I'm fighting my way now out to succeed and to achieve something. But I've already believed and anchored this into my soul at some level that I'm, when I say soul, I mean the mind, the will, the emotions, like the internal nature. I know some people use the word soul as like the eternal spirit or that thing. I don't mean it that way. I'm just using it as like the internal self. So I just want to distinguish that. But when we don't know that we've got this anchoring of self-negation within us, against us, there's a loss of power that comes with that. And then we have to force our way to succeed at things. And this puts us under a lot of stress, and we're kind of hardened in a way, and we're tense going through life. And it's subtle. Sometimes it's very subtle, so we don't really even notice it. Or maybe we do notice it, but we don't know what to do about it. And we just keep pushing our way through life. Well, this often climaxes for many people in what is called a midlife crisis. By the 40-year mark, let's say, on average, a lot of people tend to have emotional, psychological breakdowns, and it's happening earlier and earlier, it seems, for people everywhere. And kids are starting to have, emotional, psychological breakdowns that are really intense, and depression and anxiety and, all kinds of different, symptoms that we diagnose and give labels and names to, but they all have a pretty simple origin, a basic origin. This unprocessed pain and emotion, and this, various just disconnect from ourselves, or even a form of self-hatred, because, as a child, when we experience things happening to us, we think everything's about us very automatically, because we know our own world only. We only know our little bubble of ourselves. And so that really, it's hard not to think it's all about us. Right. And so we often make these negative conclusions about us. Like, if our parents divorce, I must have not been good enough, or maybe I caused that. You hear this all the time. People thinking that it was their fault. I mean, it's very natural for children to have this state of mind. Well, here's the thing. That happens, the state of mind occurs, and it kind of records inside of the nervous system. It definitely records inside of the, the brain. The nervous system is, now conditioned to have a pathway of this kind of belief, which is not just a thought, it's a thought with emotion. And it also has physiological manifestations, like feelings and sensations in the body, like tightness, tension, or we can, and then it has actions, associated to it. And it's like these patterns start to become part of us, and they will show up throughout life automatically, playing themselves out. These patterns will replay, and we find ourselves dramatizing, reenacting our past pain. That's why you'll see two grown people come together in a relationship and start acting like two 5-year-olds in an argument. They're reenacting the same drama they reenacted on a freaking playground or something. It's just a pattern of consciousness. Well, I was telling you my story about what happened because I wanted you to get that the reason I'm deeply involved with this type of work is because in order for me to survive, I believed that I needed to figure out how I got to where I was and kind of undo the causes. I mean, it was just like, how am I going to undo what caused me to get here? Because I got to change my life, but I don't even know what got me here in the first place. So I began to search and explore myself. It started with a basic practice of Zen Buddhist meditation, and I was just being with myself, and I started to be able to become more aware of my internal state of mind and emotions, and my history started to show up. This is where I talk about heal the past. My history started to show up, and I started to realize the unresolved pain, the unresolved judgments that I've had about myself, about people in my life that I have felt threatened by or hurt me. All these things started to come to the surface, these experiences, and I was able to process them, not with the skills and the knowledge that I currently have, because I didn't have a training, and I didn't have a ton of research and language even for what was happening, but I can reflect on what happened, and I feel very grateful that sort of intuitively, I guess, I was able to make peace with a lot of the pain that I had within myself. But the problem was, back then, there was something also happening. I was making peace with certain parts of that pain, but at the same time, there was still a part of me that felt tremendously guilty for how I had lived my life, and I was still adding on top of making peace with my historical pain, certain judgments about other things that I did or didn't do, how I lived my life, selling drugs and doing drugs and robbing people and doing criminal things and being violent and, just all that stuff. And I just felt like, wow, I started to feel like guilty for hurting people, and started to realize I had hurt myself. And so I had a lot of negative judgments that I also added on top of myself back in these early days. So I started to figure out a way to bring healing to myself, but I also started to build up some other, a sense of self-condemnation. And, what I now know, looking back, is that was already there. I mean, this idea of feeling guilty and judging self. And, I absorbed this, knowing that my mother was struggling with this from as early as when I was in her womb. She was already in a state of self-condemnation and, pain and hurt that she had from her childhood and, in the current circumstances and such. So, this pattern of judging myself and feeling guilty and all that, I noticed it in my mother, and I'm like, man, it's exactly how I feel. And when I think, well, of course, right? Where did I learn to even go that route? How did I even know to judge myself in the first place? Like, these things don't just happen automatically. They happen through our learning and our interaction with other human beings. So, it's just like wired into human nature. And so over the years now, I've learned to love myself for all of the stuff that I did and didn't do. And I'm still working. I'm 20 years plus into this work since I turned my life around, and I made a very direct, move towards figuring this stuff out for myself and learning everything I could and applying it to me. And then people started showing up and helping others. And 20 plus years later, I'm still working with things. And so it can be a lifelong journey. And I have a tremendous amount of stuff in my life and background, and I'm very passionate about this work. So, and plus you go through, I've gone through, I should say, new things, new relationships, new challenges in life that I was still not prepared to deal with. And my old patterns of consciousness showed up that I didn't even know I had inside of that space. And so that's what happens. Like there's awareness to have, and continual discoveries and work to do. There's no like one stop shop, like you're going to fix it all in one coaching session or, one therapy session or whatever, one event or something like that. No, but we can begin to learn how to be with all of these different parts of ourselves and start to bring more consciousness to our inner world and to our outer world, to ourselves and to our relationships. And we can start to then make great and powerful shifts that bring about new levels of success that we've never achieved before. And so it's, I will share with certain people who have complained to me, like, or criticized me for still having stuff come up, even though I've done this work, I've been coaching for years, and I'll have certain pains and hurts and share that. And some people who are really not, about the work the same way I am have criticized me harshly, even judged me and, looked down on me. And I accept that. I understand where they're coming from, and that's fine. I'm not judging myself. I don't feel condemned or anything's wrong with me at all. I know that this is the work to do. I think, those people who do that, they're avoiding the work themselves. They're fearful of having to face the things that they have going on. And so when I share certain things, it's threatening to them, because it would cause them to maybe have to access that themselves. They have that in their own background. And some people are not ready. I wasn't ready at a certain point. That's understandable. And so that's okay. Like, nobody needs to be forced to do this type of work, but it is something that is a continuum. It's something that, there's nowhere to get to as like a finality. It's like having a home is the analogy I've used with some of these people who criticize me or, are frustrated and think that, hey, everything should be fixed in one shot. And they don't want to have to do this work continuously and, take a look at themselves, and they just want an easy fix. And it's like, well, think about having a home. Like, you have a home, that's great. You have continuous work, repetitive work to do. When you're managing the home, you've got a yard that maybe you have to cut the grass with, trim trees, and maybe you have dishes to wash every night, or, put in the dishwasher, whatever you do, laundry to do. There's maintenance. And then there's new things you're creating all the time with your home too, right? You're creating a new space, new room, maybe you're painting walls, maybe you're remodeling. So it's like our consciousness and our whole being, really, in our lives is like that. There is no end while we're alive. There's just an ongoing, and there's certain maintenance things. We have to eat and cook dinner and, that kind of stuff. Well, same with consciousness. There are things that get to be handled. And, most of us are like, we're already existing homes. We've been around for however many years we're around. And if all of a sudden, like, you realize, wow, like, I haven't been doing the maintenance on my home for 30, 20, 15 even, like, or 40, 50 years, it's like, holy crap, I haven't done all this. So what happens when you have a home and you've neglected it for so long? Well, there's a lot more to do. It's a lot more work. It's a lot more effort to clean up, and it depends on what that home's been through, how much traffic has been in there, and like what's been going on. So some of us have a high trafficked home, like a lot of life experiences, and sometimes a lot of chaos and pain and hurt. So there's a lot more to clean up. But the good news is it can be done. And it can be done just like cleaning your house is much easier if you've got, a handful of people helping you, or even if it's just one other person helping you, that's great. But imagine if you have a small team or a whole family working together to clean a big home. It's just going to go a lot faster if everybody's in harmony and, doing their respective tasks and supporting each other along the way. It just becomes it could be even fun, right? If you decide to make it fun. It doesn't have to be uncomfortable. It just depends on what you bring to it, what you create inside of it. Well, the same with this work within ourselves, healing the past, empowering the present, so that we can then design a new future. To heal the past, it's great when you have a group of people, because there's a lot in the background, and it goes so much faster. It can be so much more fun and enjoying it, or it can be fun. It can be uncomfortable, and it will be uncomfortable. There's certain things in our past that are not comfortable, sometimes downright painful. And to make peace with those things can be a little scary or frightening. The good news is it always, and I say always, like 100% of the time, will give way to peace when anyone willingly confronts or faces it and decides to feel it all the way through, and then they can embrace it, and then they can heal it. It's going to happen. I've seen it happen time and time again. 100% consistency, not like 99 out of 100 people. I'm talking 100 people out of 100 people who are willing to go all the way through and make peace with themselves will do it. And it just happens. The only people who don't get it are people who are avoiding it, resisting it, and unwilling to do the work, right? And that's it. So nobody's ever gone in and taken a look at their history and themselves that I've worked with and not made peace with some part of themselves. I'm not saying it's cleaned up everything there is to clean up in one shot, because that's what I was just talking about. There's a continuous work to do sometimes. But the more we start to make peace with our history, the more we empower ourselves in the present moment. Because what we don't realize is that our past, when we don't have peace with lots of that part of our past, or all those different parts of our past, I should say, we're actually at odds with ourselves. We're in conflict with a portion of ourself. we're in conflict. We're resisting our own memories. So we have an internal resistance, and just that's really not healthy inside of any system that we want to have flow operating in, right? So we want there to be flow, just like a plumbing system. We want all the pipes in the plumbing system to be unblocked and open. But if there are different pipes in the system that are blocked and the water can't travel through, then there's going to be a backup and there's strain on the system. A pipe can burst and all these different things can happen, just like in ourselves. And that's what you have happening every day to people, reacting, exploding, and blowing up. Because why? Because they have not healed their past, right? You're not reacting to your partner, your wife, your husband, your kids, and the coworkers or whoever in your life because of the present moment. More often than not, it's usually, unless it's something really dramatic happening and there's something painful or dangerous happening. But a lot of these things that are happening are really not that life-threatening, and we're reacting to it as if it is because we're reacting from some seemingly life-threatening or maybe actual life-threatening situation in our childhood or something further back, like before we were even like a child who was conscious enough to be aware of such things. Things can happen and they're way below the radar, but they're there. And I've been able to unpack and uncover them for so many people and done tons of that work within myself, because there was tons of that work to do within myself. It's just what there was. Growing up was not easy for me in a lot of ways. I had a lot of great things for sure, and I'm very grateful for all of that, but there was also a lot of pain and hurt and challenges that I didn't know how to be with as a child, witnessing all of that. And then, the precognitive phase of my life, I've been able to learn, or, pre-awareness, pre-memory, let's say, like the things that happened before I could even remember, are just, not easy to access when we never really do. But I've had support, and I've created people in my life to support me. I've actually trained people on how to support me in doing this work, because I've done this work with others, and I've been able to go really deep. I've recalled incidents as early as in the womb and can validate those incidents with my mother. I've recalled incidents, my birth incident, actually. I've done this with many other people. These memories are there, and there's impacts. There's constructs that form within us, and it has an effect, is what I'm saying. And it's possible to make peace with this stuff, and it's possible to process the emotions and to release the fear and the pain and the judgments, the conclusions that we formed against ourselves in our past. This deep level deconditioning is a big part of the work that I do, but it's not all that I do. Once we start to do that, we can also start to along with that, not just like after that, but along with that, we can empower the present through various practices and activities to generate more energy, more aliveness. And I do that working with people one-to-one or in small groups. But that generation of power, empowering the present moment, it's really important. It also makes it easier to do the historical work, facing our past, getting complete with things that are in our history, and making peace with ourselves and finding that we do and can love ourselves, actually, no matter what we have in the background, no matter how ashamed we were, how guilty we felt, how angry, how hurt, how abused, how neglected, whatever. All of that stuff can be made peace with. I know I'm a living example. And if I was the only person that I've ever worked with and got it done, well, that's proof enough that it can be done. But I've worked with hundreds, maybe I've worked with thousands of people over the last 20 years. But I would say hundreds directly, one-to-one or in small groups, others within, larger audiences, and, through sharing, in broader events, that kind of thing. But it's profound what we can do, is my point. And it's possible, and it's necessary. And so designing a new future, that's what everyone's already trying to do. How many of us have dreams? We have goals. We want to achieve big things. Well, most of us are trying to work on the design the new future part, but we haven't healed the past. We haven't done the heal the past part. And so designing this new future, it's just like we get sabotaged by ourselves, and we keep creating situations that don't work based on our past, experiences. And it's just frustrating. It's annoying. You can do affirmations, you can do vision boards, you can do all that stuff. You can think to try and grow rich and all that stuff. I've done it all. I've seen so many people who've done it all. They tell me their stories and they come to me still stuck. And then, what I found, what I've stumbled into that was required and necessary is that, hey, we got to heal the past. We got to make peace with all of ourselves and everything in that history. And what that does is it just releases a tremendous amount of energy and potential to finally be empowered in the present and design a new future. So if you're interested in doing this type of work, write a comment below. You can send me a private message. I've got some new programs and events coming out. We're going to go deep into how to do this. I'm going to have some intro events and guest events that you can come to also, and just check this stuff out. If you want to have a conversation with me, you can. We'll just talk about what's possible. But just send me a message, write a comment, and would love to hear what you got also from this message. So thanks for listening. I'm sending big blessings your way, and look forward to connecting with you in the future. Take care.